Today we're looking at the New Deal. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. Also, don't forget to check out dailybellringer.com where you'll find more resources that go with many of the Bellringer videos. The Great Depression of the 1930s was a time of severe economic conditions in the United States and around the world. Millions were without work and trying to survive through these hard times. In the election of 1932, Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, ran a campaign promising to find ways to improve the U.S. economy. Roosevelt defeated Republican President Herbert Hoover, who many blame for the economic problems, despite the fact that Hoover had implemented new policies to try to slow or stop the Depression. Upon being inaugurated in March of 1933, Roosevelt immediately jumped into action by calling Congress into a special session. During what became known as the 100 Days from March to the middle of June 1933, FDR and Congress worked together to pass legislation that would battle the Depression and offer economic aid to Americans. These new programs and others aimed at combating the Depression during FDR's presidency became known as the New Deal. The first area that the New Deal addressed was the banks in the U.S., which many Americans had lost faith in after the stock market crash of 1929. Many Americans were pulling their money out of banks instead of investing it out of fear of what was happening. FDR called for a bank holiday in which all banks were ordered to close temporarily. Congress then quickly passed the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which had the purpose of restoring Americans' confidence in banks. On March 12, 1933, FDR gave the first of his fireside chats, which were radio broadcasts in which the president spoke directly to the American people and explained his policies and ideas for improving the economy. Between 1930 to 1944, Roosevelt would broadcast 30 fireside chats. In this first fireside chat, FDR explained how the Banking Relief Act would allow the government to inspect the finances of every bank and that only those banks considered to be healthy would be allowed to reopen after the holiday. Slowly, banks began to reopen, and there was no rush by Americans to withdraw money, and in fact, many began to deposit more. Next, the New Deal began to focus on the staggering unemployment in America. By 1933, nearly 13 million Americans, or 25% of the workforce, was unemployed. FDR and Congress began to create programs to get people back to work. These programs, sometimes referred to as FDR's alphabet soup, had Americans work on projects that improved America's infrastructure and public spaces. The CWA, or Civil Works Administration, put more than 4 million Americans to work building roads, bridges, schools, and airports, just to name a few. The CCC, or Civilian Conservation Corps, employed hundreds of thousands to work planting trees and building roads and public facilities in national parks. The TVA, or Tennessee Valley Authority, hired thousands to build dozens of dams and develop hydroelectric power plants to bring electricity to communities across the Tennessee River Valley. Other New Deal programs included programs to help American farmers that were dealing with severe drought. Some programs offered financial aid so farmers did not lose farms or regulated crop prices. Many Americans were happy about New Deal policies, but many criticized them, saying that the government was growing too big and that FDR was taking on more authority than a president should. Still, others argued the New Deal did not go far enough and that more aid should be offered. Nonetheless, in the midterm elections of 1934, New Deal Democrats won a majority in Congress, which then in turn ushered in what became known as the Second New Deal. Part of this Second New Deal was the WPA, or Works Progress Administration, which, similar to the Civil Works Administration, put over 8 million Americans to work on roads and thousands of public projects. In 1935, the Social Security Act was passed and is still in place today, which goal was to give financial security to elderly, disabled, and unemployed Americans. Beyond banks and job creation, the New Deal also included legislation that dealt with labor relations. In 1935, the National Labor Relations Act, or Wagner Act, was passed that gave workers the right to join unions and take part in collective bargaining, or in other words, negotiate with employers about wages and working conditions as a group. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 established a minimum wage, which was 25 cents per hour that employers had to pay workers. To this day, the New Deal is a historically controversial issue. Many historians and economists argue whether it helped or hindered the end of the Great Depression. Furthermore, many argue as to the extent to which FDR and the New Deal broadened the reach of the federal government and whether programs put in place during the time are still necessary today. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.